Hey, I'm down here at the casting pond. I am going to do a little experiment here about how far are we casting. So I'm going to measure out about 100 feet and see how close I'm coming to that. We all like to talk about how far we cast, but I think the really only way to figure out how far you're casting is to measure it. Because if you just go by the strips of line, it doesn't work. Because when the fly line lands, even if there's just a few little squiggles in there, it doesn't land perfectly straight. For whatever reason, those little squiggles, even if it's fairly straight, just suck the distance right out of your estimation. So the best way, and really the only way, is to measure the cast itself. When I did my first spey casting competition, I've only done 2 of them, but my first one, I thought I was bombing them with my little 15-foot 10 weight, had it like a 68, 69 foot head. And I was just imagining all the distance I was getting. So I went to the actual course where like 100 feet was measured out. I was barely hitting it. Sometimes I might have got 110. More often than not, I wasn't even getting 100. I was stripping off a fair amount of line, especially in my practice sessions, but when it came right down to it, the actual distance was a lot less than I thought it was. So I'm going to run a few experiments and see how far I'm actually casting with X number of strips, like with 10 strips of line. We'll see how it goes. Line speed Jedi, over and out. Okay, the 100 feet is right behind me, about right where my nose is right now. I'm gonna see how many strips it takes to hit it, or if I can even do it. That first spey casting competition I talked about, where I was bombing cast up to 100 feet with my little 10 weight, was spey-orama conditions, which is 40-inch deep water to cast in and about 40-degree angle change. Very challenging. Here, I'm standing on a rock with no angle change, which is very easy casting. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, 11 strips. I'm a good 10, 15 feet short. I gotta stretch my running line. Hang on just a minute. Oh, shit. Hundred feet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Touch and go, and a little better. All right, what have I learned from my experiment? Number 1, that stripping sucks. I would prefer to strip 10 or 12, and felt like I had to strip a lot more. Number 2, the harder you hit it, the shorter distance you get. It has to be a smooth acceleration to a stop, and when I thought about power, I punched it too hard, and the cast just was not as good. So what worked best was a nice, not even trying to muscle it, just trying for, as Whitney Gould says, a pretty cast. So, Skagit head plus sink tip plus leader to the fly equals 35 feet. Add 13 feet for the rod, 13.5 feet equals whatever 35 and 13 is, so it's 45, and 3 is 48 and a half. For me, to the rod tip, the length of the shooting head, the sink tip itself, 3 foot of straight mono leader, we're talking 48 feet. Without shooting any line, I'm casting just, say, let's say 35, 38 feet. If everything, 48 feet, 50 feet. So, with 2 feet of overhang, theoretically, I'm casting 50 feet from my feet to the fly. To get another 50 feet, I would have to be casting 50 feet of running line. So, say 3 feet per strip times 15. 3 times 15 is 45. Throw in a couple more strips. 17 strips. So my strips are longer. So 3.5 feet times, I need my kid here. So in order to cast 100 feet, I would have to shoot 50 feet of line. No, I wouldn't, because I'm factoring in 2 feet of overhang, shooting 50 feet of line, of running line, which you could probably do if you had really long arms, five 10-foot strips, 15, let's say 14 3.5 foot strips, coupled with the fact that I'm standing on a rock a foot above the water surface instead of, say, 2 feet down, which effectively makes my rod more like a 15 or 16 footer as opposed to the 13.5 footer it is when I'm knee or thigh deep in water. What I'm saying is 100 feet is a pretty long distance to cast a Skagit head, even cheating like I am. It's pretty far, pretty far. We're looking at a lot of stripping, for me anyway, and a little luck to get 100 feet. It's just not as typical as we all think. We like to think we're fishing at 120, but realistically, 13-foot rod, 7/8 weight, I think it's more like 80, 90 feet.